The writing process has never for me been the solitary kind of Charlie Kaufman-esque,
like he's written
thing where it's like, yes, I'm writing it and this is it, it's perfect now. And
other people can have these expectations of you, but it doesn't matter. It's what you want to do is what you're gonna do, and what makes you happy is the most important thing.
Stuff happens, you get there and you're like, oh crikey, this does not work at all, we thought it would work, and it doesn't, and you make a plan. That was part of the joy, is like I had such a strong couple of collaborators there, and everyone was just like, jump in, do stuff.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Department Spotlight, which is the show where we speak to our friends and colleagues about their experiences in the film industry. Hey everybody, so I'm going to need to explain this focus business. So as you guys know, this whole in-person recording of ours is pretty new. So we were setting up and we needed a little bit more headroom on me, and while we were setting it up, this happened. And that's because we were using the Joby Gorilla Pod, which I love, but kind of sucks sometimes. And while we were fixing it, we accidentally pressed the AEL button on the Sony a7S III, which is the button that I mapped to switch between autofocus and manual focus. So at the point where it was pressed, the camera was focused on the wall, and then I guess we didn't notice until I started editing. So these shots of us looking straight into camera are all out of focus. I'm sorry. But it's fine, we shot our wide angle on the Pocket 6K, so I really zoomed into that guy, but it's a little bit of an odd angle. Doesn't matter, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Let me get out of here and let our guest speak. I think it's a pretty good podcast. So today we are talking with Pieter Du Plessis. Very excited to have you here. Thanks for coming through.
It's a pleasure.
And it's the first time that we have a guest in person since like January last year. So, because of the whole, still trying to keep the distance, but thanks so much for coming through. It's going to be very cool.
Leading on from talking about the pandemic, the first thing that Yaku told me about your work is that you made a feature film, shot it in 2019, and then a thing happened, and then you were, what was that thing?
Did something happen last year?
Anyway,
Something.
And then you were unable to release it. So speak about maybe what was that process like of birthing something and then having it stop as it.
Yeah, so I made a feature film. It's obviously it's the kind of thing that you sort of work up to over years. It never just happens overnight. So you do this and you're like, yes, I've made it. Yeah, it's great. It got selected to close the Durban International Film Festival, and then COVID happened and there was no festival to speak of. It was all online. You know, all the cool bits about going into a cinema and watching your movie on a big screen and stuff was just not there anymore.
And meeting people, I guess.
You know, so there's a lot of stuff that would have been real nice to have that just didn't happen. Obviously, cinemas also were closed and are struggling, and business rescue and stuff now, which obviously makes the prospects of selling your film quite difficult. So it's this wonderful thing about like, yes, I made a movie, and it just goes, oh, okay, well, yeah, I made a movie, I guess. I mean,
let's bring it back a little bit. Tell us about your film, or what you can, because obviously it's not out yet, like you just said. So there's a lot of stuff that's still like secretive or whatever. But maybe tell us a little bit just what the film's about and what inspired it. When did you start the process?
So I started the process years and years and years ago. It actually started with me and the guy who edited the film, Leon Gerber. We were chatting about ideas for the Kyk Net Silverskermfees. We wanted to make. We're just like, okay, let's just do ideas. It was me, him, and his sister, chatting about ideas for Silverskerm movies, and we had lunch. And we came up with like 5. One of them being Die Laaste Afrikaners, which is this post-apocalyptic thing, and it's this dad and this girl, and they just want to find their people. You know, it's about like
Okay.
nationalism and tribalism and
Yeah.
stuff. And they're just like, no, you know, everything's gone to hell, but we need to find our people. And then they find their people. They find like Afrikaans people in the desert, but
Yeah.
then it turns out that these are really crappy people. And that was sort of the genesis of it. So the movie's about this young woman who arrives with her wounded dad on this farm, and they get taken in by this family, but very soon the family starts going like, hey, but don't you want to stay? Don't you want to maybe marry our son? And the way everything sort of conspires to sort of act against what she wants to do with her life. It's a slow burn tension thriller. It's post-apocalyptic slow burn tension thriller. It's mostly about like how societal structures and all the little social minutiae around between people sort of keep us in boxes and push us towards decisions that we would not necessarily otherwise make.
It's very interesting that you did a post-apocalyptic movie that then was supposed to come out in 2020.
And it comes out in the apocalypse, right? I mean,
That's pretty crazy. Okay, so you had this idea for the Silverskerm Feest, which, if anybody international people don't know, it's a big festival in South Africa where KykNet, which is the biggest Afrikaans TV channel, they basically fund a bunch of short films. So you went from that idea. How did you make it into a feature? Like, did you get into Silverskerm? What was the process?
oh, I did not get into Silverskerm with that. Did I come and get in before or after? I think I actually did make one before. I made one called Arts, a short film called Arts, for Silverskerm Feest. Yeah, I think that might have been us being like, okay, I've already made one. Let's see if we can make another one, and I just won't direct that one because you can't direct it twice.
Yeah.
So the idea was, I think, that I would produce more. I'm terrible with timelines, so this tends to blur into each other. I have no idea whether this was before or after Arts, but so the point was I'd made Arts, and I had decided that I'd written a couple of Afrikaans pilots and a feature and stuff, and I realized that if you limit yourself to Afrikaans, what you have is you've got a single person you can sell it to, and if they don't like it or don't want it for whatever the reasons, then you're just dead in the water. It's like, who else are you going to sell it to if KykNet doesn't want it? So I'd written these things and like gotten feedback from commissioning editors like, wow, this was really well written. Unfortunately, it's not what we kind of doing right now, which is understandable. I mean, they know their target market and everything. But I realized that, so unless you hit that, whatever the bullseye is that KykNet wants, that's it. Like, it's like, okay, try again. So I decided I wanted to do something English, and this idea had just sort of stuck with me. Just this image of this daughter and the father in the Karoo, fighting to survive. And so I asked Leon, hey man, is it okay if I just take this and sort of run with it and see where it goes? And he graciously said yeah. And I started writing it, and I sort of stripped the more tribalist Afrikaner angle out of it just to make it a bit more international. So the whole idea of the film is it could be taking place anywhere and nowhere. It's not very specifically geographically bound, which was very much an idea that we like actively pursued. We'd have like those American type shovels with the arrow point and without the back thing, next to normal shovels that you'd usually have in South Africa and stuff, just to like sort of confuse the geography of it all.
Like specifically non-specific.
Specifically non-specific.
That's really cool. That's really interesting.
So the idea was that this is just like, this is almost it's almost mythical in that it's this anywhere and nowhere kind of thing. But I started writing, and I got really intrigued about this idea of this woman who's in this place, and it's like seeing a prison door like slowly close, and all she can do is watch it close on her, and have that kind of slow revelation of no, this is not what I want. Okay, it's getting worse. And then having to do something about it. It really intrigued me. And so I started writing, and I mean, I am a very slow writer, so I wrote the first draft in like 2017 in December or something.
Okay.
But I kept twiddling at it. I rewrote the feature for Daryl Root in that time. So there's lots of other jobs that came in between. You know, I worked on a couple of features and stuff. And then in 2019, I sent it to Daryl Root, who I work with a lot. And he really liked it. So he just told me, hey, I'm sending it to Greg, okay? And Greg Buckle is this producer who has done a ton of stuff in South Africa.
Yeah.
And he was working with Daryl on another movie at the time. So Daryl just sent my screenplay. And Greg apparently saw something in it. We rewrote for another couple months. And then Anand Singh and them from Video Vision came on board.
Yeah.
And they agreed to fund him.
Amazing.
And then it was like this whirlwind of like it's a slow slog. Okay, we shoot in 5 weeks. And
Wow, that's intense.
So what happened? You said that you rewrote it as soon as you got interest on it. What were those sort of considerations? What had to sort of change from that script you had written that got interest to? Because we've recently sort of encountered studio notes for the first time on an edit, and we found it a really like interesting process. We thought there's always this like expectation of like, oh, studio notes are going to be like the worst or whatever, but that was actually amazing getting like 6 different views on it all at the same time. And we ended up in it was a really healthy process actually. So what was that process like of like having to change to shoot?
The rewriting process is a bizarre one to me. It's a bit like the 5 stages of grief. Every time I get notes, I'm like, what is this shit? You know, blah, 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 sort of defensive and angry, and you go around, then you're like, okay, let's look at it again. You're like, okay, maybe they've got a point there. Okay, that's not a terrible note. Yeah, okay, I can change that. Yeah, sure. And then later you're like, oh yeah, this is actually good. If I do this, then I have to change that, and then it's gonna be better because this just meshes better. And so I mean, a lot of the time there are a lot of things that people do want to take into consideration, right? So when you get people like Anand Singh and Video Vision who know the distribution and what it takes to sell movies, like they know that stuff inside out. They've been doing it forever. There's a certain amount of stuff where they're like, hey, we think it would sell best if it has an R rating, or if it doesn't have it, you know, if it's PG-13 or whatever. And then according to those things, you'll tweak some stuff. They are obvious story things. They had a lot of input around the actual like tension arc of the story. There was so it's. I mean, it's similar to getting notes from anybody else. It's just that obviously when people give you money, you sort of listen a bit harder. But in all, it was a very positive process. We could discuss the notes that I didn't agree with, and they were always willing to talk about it. And in the end, what you do is you sort of find a middle ground. You sort of figure out a way to include what it is that is actually bothering people, because often it's not the note, it's the note underneath the note.
I see.
It might be that, you know, I feel like in this scene, this character doesn't really make sense. They just react weirdly. And then you realize, oh, but this is not the problem. The problem is I needed to have planted right in the beginning that this is a thing that this character might do.
I see.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, now it's a plant and a payoff. Now it's not just like this thing that happens that's sort of bizarre. So having outside like eyes for that kind of stuff is always absolutely incredibly important.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through 2 weeks at Leon Gerber's house, the editor, and we went for a deep dive, and he gave notes, and we worked on the dialogue together. So there are many cooks that make up a movie, and I mean, even before you start rolling a camera.
Yeah.
The writing process has never for me been the solitary kind of Charlie Kaufman-esque, you know,
like he's written
thing
and he
where
shoots
it's like, yes, I'm writing it and this is it, it's perfect now. And which, by the way, I'm sure even Charlie Kaufman doesn't do it that way. This is just the idea of it. Like, it's never been that for me. I've always written with my wife, who has this incredible grasp of story. So she's always my first reader. She's the person that we go eat pizza, and then have a glass of wine, and then just sit and break story together.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's this, and that's where most of the stories come from, is us like sort of struggling with it and having issues and being like, no, but that won't work because this, and then we figure it out. And then only do I go and write it. And then once it's written, she reads it again, and we go through it again, and then I should give it to other friends. Yeah. So there's never this monolithic moment of creation. It's always this thing where other people are in, and it's messy, and it's
That's awesome.
That's
very cool.
A lot similar to our process. Like we've also never been like this sort of solitary.
But also we're co-writers, so we've never had the opportunity to really write alone.
I've written stuff by myself, and it's always been a far worse process.
It is. It's worse, man. I mean, look, I write everything myself, and then I rewrite with other people in general. But that's the thing. If I had to just sit there and hit my head against the wall until it's good, it would take a lifetime. But the moment someone else comes in and they're like, oh yeah, but this character doesn't read well for me, or what if we just kill everyone at the end, you know? Then suddenly you're like, oh yes, and it breaks you, because the more you write, the more you've got these blinkers that sort of just go, and other people coming in and going, hey dude, did you see that thing there? Yeah. Like I don't know how you write without it.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I mean,
same.
I think our channel members know we released 12 films last year, and all of them were co-written. They were made by us together, and then with all the other people who also give their input. And there's just no way that we would have been able to do that, like you say, because trying to make something perfect by yourself is only going to be perfect to you and nobody else. And what are you making the art for?
It also just sounds less fun.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, why would you take from the most collaborative art form and then just make it this solitary, boring experience? You know what I mean? I couldn't.
And I can't make anything that's perfect for me. Everything I've ever written, I've been like, it was so cool in my head, man. We need to make this better. And the only way I know of to make it better is to get outside people in. So I don't even know about, like, I don't know how people freaking do it. My grandfather used to write like that. He used to, like, my grandmother never read the stuff he wrote while I was writing it. And
Can we talk about your granddad for a second?
Oh, yeah. So my granddad is Pieter Du Plessis, who is an award-winning writer of everything
in South Africa.
In South Africa, yes. So he was a household name. He was personally also a celebrity because he was on television. Like, he had these talk show things that he did, but he was an incredible writer. So there were a couple of times when I sat around the kitchen table on the farm talking story with him, like late at night.
Yeah.
And it was always the most frustrating experience in the world, because I'd come with this idea and then he'd go, oh, that's a cool idea. What if? And then tell you this perfect story. And I'm like, oh, my story went there and okay. And it was just incredible. And like the way, because I mean, the plotting of his things were always like really good. He used to just write alone, and then, I mean, obviously I got to know him at the tail end of his career when he had so much respect that nobody dared countermand him. So maybe it's a function of that, but he always just wrote the things and then basically sent them in, and everyone's like, yeah, cool, okay, cool, yeah. And
here's some money, go make it.
Yeah, like, he never showed it to my grandma. He didn't, like, I don't know how the heck you do that. How do you write something that's that good just on your own? It's just...
No, that's incredible. Wow. How does that sort of, I mean, I think this is a bit of a tangent, but how does that sort of, like, you following in his footsteps kind of thing, right? Do you ever feel pressure to like live up to him, or how's that for you?
I used to feel a lot more pressure. I used to have this idea. It's based on the romanticism that young people have. Young people, I'm like this old guy. It's like the romanticism that young people have around the things that they then choose to do. Yeah, when I decided, I studied journalism. I never studied film, and then I decided that I wanted to become a filmmaker. And immediately you have this kind of thing like, oh wait, but that's what Grandpa, like he wrote a ton of really iconic things, and immediately you sort of have this specter looming over you. But I don't really think that actually exists. There's no shadow. The only shadow he casts is in the like popular consciousness, and that's not ever gonna be a detriment to me. Maybe on the first thing you make or stuff, people will be like, oh look, it's Pieter's grandson, and make a thing of it, and then they're gonna forget about it, and you're just gonna be another guy doing these things. It's it's only with this movie that I decided to be Pieter Du Plessis, because I did arts under the nom de plume of P.G. de Jonge. As a sort of as an homage, but also as a way to not be, because I've got the same name, so I couldn't be PG, and I couldn't be Pieter G. Du Plessis. Sounds and Pieter Du Plessis is the most common name in the universe, in South Africa, not in the universe, and so I thought no, I need to sort of break away and make my own brand and blah blah blah, and I just realized this is a weird kind of hubris. It's like, who do I think I am? Am I gonna be like, oh, my grandpa's gonna hold me back or something? I don't know, man. It's an affectation.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
No, that's very cool. Like even people like Emma Stone, her real name is Emily Stone, but she changed it to Emma because I think at that point there was too many Emilys, and now look, there's too many Emmas. But I think that's very cool that you now decide to stick to your name, right? Because it's like other people can have these expectations of you, but it doesn't matter. You know, it's what you want to do is what you're gonna do, and what makes you happy is the most important thing. So I think that's very inspiring of you to say, you know, like, never mind who my granddad was. I am me. And I'm gonna do my thing my way. That's
dude,
cool.
and if they compare me to him, that's freaking great, dude. I love the old man, and I miss him daily. And like, if they want to compare me to him, go ahead. I mean, I will never live up to that in my mind, and that's okay. It's at a certain point, it becomes that thing of like, this guy is such a huge example in my life that I will never live up to him, and there's freedom in that. I maybe one day I will, but it doesn't feel like I ever will, and that's great, and that's okay.
So it reminds me of Sofia Coppola as well. Like,
talk about living up to your family, eh?
But then I always find that it's always like the sort of the terrible articles that sort of want a headline that are still comparing, but in my mind, they're so different. Like, she's able to not even try and live up, but go off in her own direction, to the point where I sometimes remind myself, like, oh, they're father and daughter, when there's like pictures of them together. But it's almost like you don't actually have to live under the shadow, because you can just be your own.
If at this point you're still comparing her to her father in anything other than we're comparing these two filmmakers, like after all the things she's done, the really great work she's created, like if you are still going, oh, that's Francis's daughter, like what the hell are you doing, man? Like then it becomes some weird misogynist thing, I think. Like then it becomes like, oh, female filmmaker, let's always, it's always about who the guy was, and I don't know, but yeah, like, and that's the thing. She's made a lot of stuff already now. She's made a couple of really great stuff, and now she's her own thing.
I think let's get back onto your film. We haven't even said the title of your
Oh, the title of the film it's called Dust. And boy, was there a lot of dust.
We'll put the trailer in the description below.
Rock and roll, thank you.
What was sort of like, so you said from like being greenlit to production was 5 weeks, right?
Once again, I'm bad with timelines, so it was probably not 5 weeks. It was probably longer. There was so once I got the go ahead, I started location scouting.
Okay.
Because when you make a micro budget movie, if you're the director and writer, you will also be the location scout. There isn't that, like, I've never heard Daryl Ruitt still does most of his own location scouting. You know, it's the way these things go in this country. So I literally drew a circle around my house that's about an hour's drive, and I drove everything in that whole radius, all the way to Heidelberg, all the way like past Krugersdorp, all the way up to freaking Pretoria, and places that I've never known existed, in this horrifying quest to find a location for my movie. Because okay, so this is my first movie, so we want to be able to make it pretty cheaply. So we make it a single location. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I write single location. And as I write, I'm like, okay, so this location is like this farmhouse. Great. Okay, so farmhouse, beautiful. And obviously, because it's a farmhouse, there's fields, and there's a barn, and then once you get there, you're like, oh crap, I've created something so specific here that to actually find this place, because now it's post-apocalyptic, so now we have to have a dilapidated farmhouse with a dilapidated barn with fields that look like crap. So initially I wanted to do this in the Karoo, but the Karoo was becomes exorbitantly expensive because it's an away shoot for everybody. So it becomes prohibitive very quickly. But then Daryl, actually, he took me, he just said, dude, don't worry, you can shoot it here in Joburg. And I was like, no, but it's not desert, it's too planty, it's not post-apocalyptic enough and stuff. And Daryl was just like, no, just come with me and we'll take a drive. And he drove me up there to Mulder's Drift, to this place that he'd been to before to look for another movie. And it was just this wonderful thing where there are plants, but it's bleak. It's like when you shoot at the end of winter here in Joburg, everything's brown. It's just blackjacks and khaki balls everywhere. It's like there's something delightfully post-apocalyptic about it in a way that feels more real than just having everything be the wide open Karoo.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, we've seen a lot of the wide open Karoo kind of post-apocalypses, and it's they're all a bit fantastical because it's always like, oh yeah, there just happens to be a lot of water here and everything.
All right.
But suddenly this is like, oh yeah, this still looks dry. And they're all like plants and things that are struggling, but they look like they're struggling.
Yeah. But there's enough for them to try.
Yeah, so you can think that, okay, so you could theoretically grow things here. It's not like trying to grow crops in the middle of the desert with no water. So you could theoretically grow things here, but it's going to be hell. And then just have them be like, oh yeah, but this farm's here because there's actually water. And then, you know, so it just sort of makes everything a bit more believable, I think. And there's a delightful bleakness that you get from high-felt winter.
It's like there's almost hope.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, but the hope is gross, man. It's like there are plants, but it's like weeds. It's like those blackjacks that just like they stick to everything, but they also like because in the summer blackjacks are green and red and kind of nice. And then in winter they dry completely, and it's these shriveled stalks that just stand there with these spiky seeds on them. So I was driving, trying to look for a location in this area after Daryl had showed me that, hey, you can make it here. I was, after I think 2.5 weeks of looking, I came home just one day and I just had a freaking panic attack on the couch because I didn't have a location, and at that point we were shooting in 5 weeks. And I'd find something that we can sort of make work. And I found this one farm that while Daryl and I were driving, we just went up this random road and we got to this farm and the gate was locked and we couldn't get in. And we just stood there, hollered for a bit, and then we're like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. And just as we were climbing to drive out, another car came and pulled up. And they opened for us, and we thought, oh, maybe we can shoot the exteriors here and do the interiors in the other place. Because there wasn't really a place to do the interiors there. So once we were about 4 weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I think, from cameras rolling, I just went and showed Greg, because at this point he'd flown up from Cape Town. I showed Greg the place, and the farmer had mentioned something about another house on the farm, but he said it's real difficult to get there. So I was just like, no, we can't. We don't have 4x4s. We can't. And I was like, how difficult is it to get there? So we took my Polo and we drove it, and it wasn't that bad. I don't know what the farm. And suddenly we have this house. Like there's this house on this farm, and it's an hour's drive from my house. So it's like it wouldn't destroy our budget with overtime and with the amount of petrol we'd be using and stuff like that. And suddenly there's just this location, and it's there, and it's like, oh, yes. And because of other things. So I shot arts with this wonderful DOP called Dino Benedetti. And we were just like, yeah, man, we're going to make this. We're going to do this thing. And then because the movie got moved up, it clashed with another big project that he'd already confirmed on. So suddenly I lost my DOP like 3 weeks before shooting as well. So there were all these things that just like, it just piled on. And I was just like, oh, I could just feel everything falling apart. And it was just the worst thing ever. I do rock climbing, so in rock climbing I met a producer at Quizzical, and I was just like, dude, my DOP, I just lost him. Do you know of anyone who's really keen? Because I mean, it's a micro budget movie. This is not going to be. We're not going to give you ad rates, guys. So everybody who worked on this thing worked for like a fraction of their rates, and it's incredible. Like the amount of buy-in I got, and the amount of just like people being like, dude, it's fine, we love it, we'll do it, was incredible. And then he actually said, well, there was this one DOP who I spoke to who said he really wants to do features because he does mostly commercials, called Thomas Revington. Yeah. And I just contacted the dude and I said, hello, so we're making this movie and I sort of need a DOP and
oh yeah, I'm not going to pay you your rates.
Oh, no, it was better, man. Like Tom, he came in and he said, okay, it's fine, I'll forego more of my rate so you can pay the guys in my team more.
Really?
Yeah, dude, oh man, what a guy, dude. This is like, so I got so lucky with Tom, and working with him was just absolutely incredible. It's what you always look for, right? Yeah. You want somebody who sort of comes from the same place as you. Like immediately he was like, okay, so this one scene. So I was thinking like Blade Runner 2049. I'm like,
yes,
I'm in. Just for the interiors, like as a reference for inside the house, like make the walls darker, make everything like, and we just immediately clicked, like all the references. I was like, so I was thinking like No Country for Old Men outside, and he was like, yeah, that's wonderful. And he made some LUTs that like. So while we're shooting, we can put the No Country for Old Men on and be like, yeah, that looks cool. Okay. So it's just so cool. I lucked out really hard with like so many of the people that worked on this. It was incredible.
Wow.
So you're shooting it. Just to talk about locations again briefly is sort of like a two-part question, I guess. Is like, with this location, did you still have to adapt some things that were in the script? And then also just how was shooting it? Well, what was it like?
What was production like? So we had to change a lot of things. So I had to go back to the script and plot out the way you'd move from one room to the next, because it's at one point that's very important. The actual house itself wasn't nearly dilapidated enough. We had to bring in a lot of, once again, you think, oh yes, we make a single location film, and then you go, but it's post-apocalyptic. So everything has to be broken or old or, Anyway, so we had to change a lot of the house to fit with the script, and we had to change little bits of the script to fit with the house. Like, oh, you go in through the window, but suddenly you're like, I can't go in through the window because there are burglar bar things welded onto the window. So we're like, okay, so we have to retool this whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, they always, but I've never really encountered it where you get to a set and you're just like,
Yeah.
yes, this is exactly what I need. Nothing needs to change. And then what's production like? So production was the best time of my life. There was just, oh dude, the actors I worked with were so great. We got our lead is Shana Mans. I met her and Danielle the Friday before we rolled on the Monday.
Whoa.
And it's always this thing, you want to build a rapport,
Yeah.
and there's like, okay, so I'm just going to take them out to dinner just to show them that I'm not like some weirdo. I mean, as far as I can. And just try and make friends, and immediately I just got along with them. It was just like so delightful. And everybody, I had Gustav Gardner, who played one of the leads in Arts, back, and he's always just so great to work with. And Kaz McFadden was there, and like, just if you want to have fun on set, just get Kaz in there. Like, it's just so great. And Michelle and everybody just came there, and they brought this wonderful attitude. And stuff happens. You get there and you're like, oh crikey, this does not work at all. We thought it would work, and it doesn't. And you make a plan. And that was part of the joy. Is like I had such a strong couple of collaborators there, and everyone was just like, jump in, do stuff. So because we don't have money, we have a light and 2 LED tubes. Do we have another light? We might have my whole movie except the night exteriors. The night exteriors we got in two sort of 2.5K kind of things, just so you can
Just
so it's not like the spotlight in the middle of nothing. Everyone's like, where's all this light coming from? Why is it not on the back of the trees? But the whole movie was basically lit with two LED tubes and 2 lights.
Wow.
And it looks so good.
Wow.
It's just
I'm so excited to see this movie.
Oof, yeah.
Awesome. Let's move on just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I mean, dude.
Great. This is all really good stuff. I'm really enjoying listening, because obviously we haven't made a feature yet, so it's like, this like it sounds tough, but it sounds fun.
These are the problems that I would like to have.
Kind of thing. But you finished the film, right? You went into post. I don't know if we have time to talk about all of post. I'm sure that was its own whole thing. But okay, so you went into post, you finished the film, and then you submitted it to festivals, and then, like we said earlier, the whole
COVID thing happened.
The little problem. How's life been since? What is sort of happening with the film at the moment?
So the plan in general was firstly to wait until festivals happen again, because we did go to a couple of these online festivals, but the like virtual attendance isn't great. Because if you watch a movie on your laptop at home, you go and you're like 10 minutes in, you're not super invested, and you close it down and you leave and whatever. Whereas if you go to a festival and you're like, okay, I'm going to watch movies like a whole day.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're going to watch the whole of the movie. So what you get is attendance is horrifyingly bad. And there's not a lot that comes, we didn't get a lot of interest in things from like these online well, the few that we entered, we didn't enter a lot because in the end it turned out like, we don't think this online festival thing really works. Especially not for something that's like the slow burn. You sort of want people to sit there and go like, okay, what am I watching? Why? And it's slow and it's odd, and then you're like, this is where it's going.
Yeah.
So the plan is to basically, I think, wait until America is vaccinated and people go to cinemas and things again, and then just target some sci-fi festivals and see if we can get a sale there.
Okay, amazing. Well, I hope that it happens quick. I hope that you get into all the festivals that you need to get into, because I really want to see this movie. I really want to see the movie. For now, the trailer is linked in the description. So if you guys want to go check that out along, can people contact you, maybe follow you on Instagram, that kind of thing?
Sure, I am at Pieter Du Plessis.
It'll also be linked in the description.
I'm that on Twitter as well, if you want to.
The same
on
handle.
the tweet. Yeah, Pieter Du Plessis. It's kind of a nice one because no one ever has that for some reason. Yeah, people can contact me. I'm always keen to do stuff. I'm writing 2 screenplays right now, try and get the next one made, while just staying afloat in the South African film industry.
Yeah, like all of us. Mark, do you want to have any closing thoughts?
Well, we always ask for inspirational words. So, do you have any inspirational words for someone perhaps heading into their first feature, or maybe even in a similar position? What would you...
Abandon all hope, ye who enter. No, I mean, it's really difficult to give advice on a broad basis in the film industry, because every movie and every person in the industry is so specific. If you listen to how writers broke into Hollywood, like whatever, the stories, interviews with writers, like no 2 of them are the same. And very often, they're not the same because they rely on something like, hey, I met this dude at a party.
Yeah.
And he happened to work at blah, blah. And then we hit it off. And then I got a job out of that 3 years later. So, I mean, the thing is, there's this thing where between realism and idealism that you have to nurture as an artist, I think, where you have to be realistic enough to know this is probably not going to be the next Jaws. This is not necessarily the greatest film ever made. And at the same time believe that, holy crap, this could be great. This is going to be huge. I love it. It's going to be the best thing ever. I need to throw everything we've got at it. And there's this weird dichotomy that you have to nurture inside yourself. Because if you don't have that sort of boundless optimism, you won't ever sit down to write. You won't ever get your nose to the grindstone to get things done. But at the same time, you also have to be very realistic, because this is a terrible industry to be in. If you think the guys from Script Notes actually did it, they said to be a working screenwriter in Hollywood, you've got a better chance of playing in the NFL than being a working screenwriter in Hollywood. There's a certain kind of insanity to trying to do this. And I mean, that's the biggest film industry in the world. Like now here in South Africa, things start becoming a bit more like knife edge. So yeah, I think that's the thing. Be realistic. Know your limitations. Know what you are not good at. Try and get people who are better at it than you and learn from them. Don't have ego. Don't worry about taking criticism, because that if you can't take criticism, you are only gonna fail. You need people to come in and tell you what's not working, because most of the time you know it as well.
Wow, that's very good advice. Amazing. Very good advice. Thank you so much
you.
for coming on our
having
podcast. Yeah, and thank you everybody for watching and listening to the podcast. We hope you've gotten something from it. I know I've gotten a lot from it. Mark, I'm sure you as well. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It's awesome just listening to you, and you've got that passion. So it's really cool to just listen, and because I don't think we said a lot of things in this podcast, but thank you so much. And for you guys there at home, please consider subscribing and pressing the like button. It really helps us out. And
comment down
leave a
below.
comment.
We also have a membership thing that we've set up. You can see in our previous video.
Yeah, consider joining. It's cheap.
Tell your friends.
Yeah, that's the one. Share it with all your friends. But until next time, go out there, stay safe.
And make your movie.